Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a truly monumental and tragically devastating seismic event that recently shook South America. On August 10, 2026, Colombia experienced its strongest earthquake of the 21st century. It's a highly complex situation, with a massive human impact, sprawling geographical damage, and a deeply intricate recovery effort. We're going to break all of that down step by step so you can truly grasp the sheer scale of this disaster. So, let's start with a number, 7.4. At exactly 7:34 a.m. local time, that was the magnitude of the earthquake that violently struck Western Colombia. Just imagine waking up, or maybe you're just starting your morning commute, and suddenly you experience a violent jolt of that magnitude. It wasn't just a minor tremor, right? It was a sudden, shocking force that lasted for roughly 2 terrifying minutes. And it was so powerful, it could actually be felt as far away as neighboring Panama, Ecuador, and Venezuela.
But to really understand the data, we have to look at the people affected by it. Take Jorge Moncayo, for example. He's a 64-year-old taxi driver in Cali who literally saw plumes of dust shoot up across his city. He told reporters, "My entire house shook. I've never lived through such a powerful earthquake." That just brilliantly illustrates the sheer terror on the ground. When the earth beneath a nation of millions violently shifts without any warning, the reality is immediate, and it is terrifying.
Section 1. The 7.4 magnitude strike in Ground Zero in Choco. The sequence of events that morning moved frighteningly fast. At 7:34 a.m., the main 7.4 shock hit. The epicenter was located near the rural town of San Jose del Palmar, out in the heavily forested western department of Chocó. And it originated deep underground, at a depth of roughly 107 to 110 kilometers. Then, less than an hour later, at 8:18 a.m., a 5.0 magnitude aftershock rattled the already weakened infrastructure. By midday, recognizing the immense scale of this crisis, the government officially declared a state of national disaster.
Now you might be wondering, why here and why was it so powerful? Well, Colombia's Pacific coast sits squarely on the Ring of Fire. This earthquake was essentially a massive 110-kilometer deep rupture within the Nazca Plate, right as it subducts beneath the South American plate. This constant geological friction is exactly what makes this specific region so incredibly vulnerable to the exact type of deep, violent rupture we saw on August 10th.
Section 2. The tragic human cost, casualties, and the missing.
As of right now, we're looking at a stark, confirmed death toll of at least 111 people, alongside over 590 confirmed injuries. And it's so important to remember these aren't just statistics. These are lives lost across multiple regions, with the highest fatalities reported in the Risaralda and Valle del Cauca departments. Hospitals were overwhelmed almost instantly, and the sheer severity of the disaster stretched emergency resources to their absolute limits.
But honestly, perhaps the most heartbreaking aspect of all this is the uncertainty. Over 1,400 people were rapidly listed on online missing person registries, particularly in hard-hit cities like Cali and Pereira. Families have been plunged into just agonizing uncertainty, desperately searching for their loved ones who went missing beneath the rubble of collapsed homes, clinics, and office buildings.
Yet right in the face of this absolute tragedy, everyday people stepped up. Listen to Juan Carlos Osorio, a resident of Cali. He said, "All of us neighbors are working together, forming human chains. There are many people trapped." Way before heavy machinery could even arrive on the scene, it was the raw civilian bravery and solidarity of neighbors literally digging with their bare hands that defined those initial rescue efforts.
Section 3. Widespread structural devastation, from historic landmarks to hospitals.
The geographic spread of this destruction is just staggering. In Valle del Cauca, specifically in Colombia's third-largest city of Cali, at least 25 buildings totally collapsed, with heavy structural damage reported at the University Hospital of Valle. Over in Risaralda, the city of Pereira saw dozens of buildings go down. In Chocó, which was Ground Zero, damage to rural municipalities was severe, and cell signals were completely knocked out, which obviously made it incredibly difficult for rescuers to even access the area. And finally, in Caldas, the city of Manizales suffered collapses of both homes and historic landmarks. The footprint here is just massive.
And the specific local impacts truly bring those regional statistics to a shocking reality. Over in Pereira, 16 people were trapped mid-air in the city's mega-cable transit system for 8 hours. In the town of El Cairo, reports indicated a staggering 80% of all homes were destroyed, and local officials in Quibdó described the structural damage there as simply monstrous.
And look, this earthquake spared absolutely no type of architecture. Over in Manizales, the tremor actually caused the collapse of one of the main towers of the historic Cathedral Basilica of Our Lady of the Rosary. The neo-Gothic tower fell directly right into the nave of the church. It just goes to show that whether it was a modern medical clinic or a towering historic landmark, the sheer force of the earth shifting was completely indiscriminate.
Section 4. Aviation and infrastructure halted, navigating the disruption.
So this builds into an even more complex crisis. On one hand, the earthquake forced the suspension of operations across at least 7 regional airports, including Pereira's Matacaña Airport, where ceilings had partially collapsed. Flights were paused everywhere, just so engineers could run critical structural safety checks. But simultaneously, we see a totally independent hazard pop up. The Puracé volcano began emitting airborne volcanic ash and gases, forcing the completely separate closure of the Popayan Airport. So aviation authorities were literally managing 2 simultaneous, entirely unrelated natural emergencies at the exact same time.
Now, with transport heavily restricted and panic setting in, economic responses became absolutely crucial. LATAM Airlines stepped in and implemented strict temporary maximum fare caps for flights to and from affected cities like Cali, Armenia, and Pereira. This was a vital move to prevent price gouging during the regional evacuation panic, making sure that folks who were trying to leave or maybe trying to reach their loved ones wouldn't be financially exploited.
Section 5. The Unified Rescue Response. Mobilizing a nation.
So, how did the government actually react to all of this? Well, the newly inaugurated president, Abelardo de Espriella, moved very quickly. Step 1, he officially declared a state of national disaster to expedite federal recovery funds. Step 2, he established a unified command post to coordinate the massive logistics of the response. And Step 3, he deployed specialized emergency rescue and army units directly to the hardest-hit zones, prioritizing search and rescue for the hundreds still trapped under the rubble.
The president publicly stated the state is present and taking action, aiming to reassure a very panicked populace. However, down on the ground, the reality of the logistics was still catching up. Local leaders, like the mayor of Cali, for instance, were concurrently issuing urgent public pleas for more rescuers, simply because local hospitals and first responders were completely overwhelmed by the sheer volume of collapsed structures and injured citizens arriving at their doors.
But help did arrive, from both inside and outside the country, sparking this really massive wave of solidarity. Domestically, the capital city of Bogotá dispatched 100 of its own rescuers to assist Cali. Internationally, Ecuadorian President Daniel Noboa offered a 47-member specialized search and rescue team. Leaders from the U.S. and France, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio and President Emmanuel Macron, pledged their support. And global relief organizations like World Central Kitchen immediately set up operations on the ground to serve hot meals to displaced residents and exhausted first responders.
Which leaves us with a really crucial question to ponder. As these communities bravely clear the rubble and begin the long, hard process of rebuilding, how will standard structural safety and disaster protocols evolve to protect this Ring of Fire nation from the next inevitable tremor? The 2026 earthquake tested Colombia's resilience to its absolute limits, but the lessons learned here will be vital for the future. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.